A yes or no answer will do, that the Prime Minister's tax cuts at the time Minister's...
Order. Members on my right.
Is it a fact that the Prime Minister's tax cuts... Is it a fact that the Prime Minister's tax cuts promise over 40% of taxpayers, many of them women, absolutely nothing? And how can you justify giving tax cuts of $47 a week to persons on $50,000 a year, but no tax cuts whatsoever to persons on $20,000 a year?
Well, the Honourable the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker.
Order.
Mr Speaker.
Order. Members on my left and on my right will cease.
Mr Speaker, I've heard some roughies in my day, but that takes the cake. All these years, when I became Treasurer, the bottom rate of tax from the threshold up to 20,000 was 30%, and to 4,900 to 5,400. You opposed those changes. You opposed those changes. When we brought in the family allowance supplement for low-income families, a targeted assistance for low-income families, you opposed those changes. You did. And the fact is, you said it was a deal with the You said it was a deal with the ACTU.
The member for Pearce will cease
interjecting. It was written off as a deal with the ACTU.
Order. The member for Bennelong will cease interjecting.
It was written off as a deal with the ACTU. Written off as a deal with the ACTU. Well, when is a deal not a deal? You want to take credit for the changes while blackguarding us as making deals. So the fact is, I say this to the Leader of the Opposition, we thought about low-income taxpayers about 5 years before you did. About 5 years before you did. And in the system, but without a 15% consumption tax. The Leader of the Opposition had the gall last night to say that that promise was unfunded. 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 But the personal tax cuts to the same area which you propose come exactly from fiscal drag. Is that unfunded? Is that unfunded? Is your fiscal drag payments unfunded? And you describe across income groups without the appropriate compensations? Because, well, that's what you've got in mind. He always engages, you see, when you're giving it to him, he always has a conference. He always has a little conference. He really has a little conference. I know, I mean, we've got to get used to these little foibles and habits of our friend opposite.
Order.
But is this, Mr Speaker,
the member for
don't come to us with any unctuous questions about the low paid. Don't come to us.
The Honourable Member for Dobell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Order.
My question without notice.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question without notice is to the Prime Minister. I asked the Prime Minister, do you stand by the figure of $46 per week as the tax cut for someone on average income?
The Honourable the Prime Minister.
Speaker, the rate scales are in the document.
Yes or no?
And I'm not
yes or no?
Get your calculator out and do your own calculator.
The Honourable Member for Burke. Order. The House will come to order. Order. The member for Kooyong will cease interjecting. The member for Burke.
Those South and North East Asian economies.
Point of order, the member for...
Can you recall a point of order that I took previously, Mr Speaker, when I said that an answer should be an answer, not a bedtime story?
Or if the Honourable Member for Franklin, makes any more interjections in the guise of points of order, he might get down to Tasmania earlier this weekend than he thought. The Honourable the Treasurer.
Payments for the GST that you're giving people under 20,000 something. I mean, it takes a lot of gall to put that proposition over, and a lot of gall you have, obviously. A lot of gall you have. Now, Mr Speaker, when we inherited the tax system, the top marginal rate in this country was 60%. Thanks to, who was the Treasurer? J.W. Howard. Take a bow. And who was his advisor? The member for Wentworth. Who was his member for Wentworth? What's the top rate today? 47%. What's the company rate then, under them? 46. What is it now? 39. What was the rate of tax on distributed incomes under Messrs Howard and Hewson when they were in office? Answer, 78 cents on the dollar. What's the answer now? 47. But if they don't distribute, it's 39. We've cut it in half, and now we've approved the depreciation. And now, after giving tax reform costing billions over the years, we're now going to reduce the median incomes from 38% to 30% with no consumption tax. With no consumption tax. And doesn't it rankle you? Doesn't it rankle you? And then you have the hide to say it's unfunded when your own things are funded by fiscal drag. When your own things are funded by the impact of inflation on the tax system, fiscal drag, you say it's unfunded. I mean, what a paltry, dishonest comment that was when your own package is, by your own measure, is unfunded. Now, Mr Speaker, apparently the Leader of the Opposition thinks we ought to hang on to the fiscal drag. But if he thinks we should hang on to it, that's part of reform. That's reform. So, Mr Speaker, see, again, you see, he's always engaged in he asks the question and he always has a little conference, a little conversation. He's psychologically unsuited to reply. Psychologically unsuited to reply. Well, Mr Speaker, he's going to have to change the old psychology quite a bit because he's going to get a lot of it. A lot of it. A lot of it. And particularly about this, about the vicious tax regime you had on Australian taxpayers and the vicious one you're about to put on them by taxing the food they put into their mouth and the clothes they put on their back for themselves and their children.
President Bush, doesn't this whole flap here in Australia about agriculture subsidies in the United States, which you indicate you're not in a position at this time to abolish, undermine your credibility, sir, when you get to Japan wearing the mantle of a free trader asking for concessions there?
No, because nobody's pure. We have differences with Australia on this. I won't necessarily bring them up in front of my very genial host here, but I had a chance to tell them the things that I'd like to see Australia do, that where we might feel there could be a little less protection. He was very clear and very forceful in telling me his. I don't consider it a flap, incidentally, when you discuss an issue where you have differences. I think it's very important that the American people and the President understand how the agriculturalists in this country look at this export enhancement program. And so I don't think it's contradictory at all. We've never said we're totally pure. We are working for freer and fairer trade. And certainly the Japanese should be working for freer and fairer trade. And if one country could hold up its hand and say, we have never had any protection of any kind or subsidization